Thank you very much for having me here today. I'm Matthew Vince, recent doctoral graduate of the Islam UK Centre, and my paper explores notions of leadership and authority expressed by Muslim RE teachers, and they seem to go beyond this sort of official political repertoire to one firmly embedded in the lived in every day. And this discussion, as I said, comes from my doctoral research with 21 Muslims who worked as non-confessional RE teachers in secondary state schools across England. And the main project was exploring what it was like to be a Muslim and a teacher, specifically an RE teacher, but this theme of leadership and authority kept coming up. So what do I mean by leadership and these themes? I have in mind Stephen Jones et al.'s 4 differing modes of Muslim leadership. And their work, I think, is really useful because they have begun to articulate a diversification of leadership and how these modes operate differently in the wider public sphere. And they mention 4 things, which is delegation, which is influencing public policy, giving voice to Muslim needs, religious authority, offering guidance to Muslims on religious matters, expertise, and standing, reflecting public prominence and influence. And I've caught up, which is really good. And what struck me were how many of these teachers encapsulated these different modes of Muslim leadership, but on a very micro and everyday level specific to their schools and community contexts, as opposed to a more national-facing and public level. This was through their positioning mainly as role models, as interlocutors, and their expertise and authority as RE teachers. So the main way in which the participants spoke of leadership was in their capacity as role models, and for many the chance to be a role model for Muslims and non-Muslim pupils was a major reason for their entry into the profession. Others noted as well that they were positioned in this capacity by others, particularly Muslim pupils. So for example, Mr. Ali spoke, "When I became a teacher, I made it absolutely clear that I refused to be a role model because that's too much pressure for me, but it's happened in terms of the character and the way Muslim pupils think." So he was put into that position, particularly by the Muslim pupils that he taught. And so as Mr. Ali spoke, role modelling brought with it standing, influence and responsibilities in his school community, particularly with regards to Muslim pupils. And when they put them in this position, despite his resistance, they sought to emulate his character and his thinking. Some of the female participants shared this more intensely, showing how some of the students actually had begun to dress like them, shaping the embodiment of their faith. They are also interlocutors between their local Muslim communities and the school leadership, and this capacity emerged as part of their role as RE teachers in the school, often consulted about matters of religion as part of their role. And so one example of this was Mrs. Ease's school here. She started the lunchtime Ramadan club for pupils fasting at lunchtime, and she also helped create this prayer facility in the school. And that was all off her own back as her role as an RE teacher. And so in this way, these teachers were able to represent the Muslim voice in their school context and affect change by taking on such initiatives. And the literature has noted how external and official voices have struggled to make these changes, but because they're sort of inside these frameworks, they can do this, they know the lingo, and they can do this from within. These teachers also had this sense of religious authority because of their idea of being RE teachers, and so they could shape how Islam was represented in their school's teaching and acted as guides to Muslim pupils on religious matters in school. And this put them actively in contention with other authoritative voices. So in the case of Miss Mia, her authority as a teacher gave her a voice to challenge male authority in the community. And as she says here, her mum said, "Keep your mouth shut because the community aren't going to look at you well." And she thought, no. And I guess teaching gives me that voice. So teaching gave her this authority to contest these male voices. Mr. Shah also made explicit reference to the local imam. She said, he feels as though I'm doing the job for the imam for them, where I'm enabling pupils to understand that Islam is much more than just a religion of rituals and practices and growing beards and covering your head. And again, this comes with his focus of RE teaching in school. And so in these instances, the participants' explicit contestation locates them in the landscape of authoritative voices in their communities. Again, this was particularly prevalent in terms of Muslim pupils, given their capacity to teach them things about their faith day in, day out. However, whilst many recognised their capacity to influence and represent Muslims in their school context, they were also keen to not be seen as Muslim RE teachers in their role, and this involved a fundamental distancing of their faith whilst they were up on the classroom stage teaching. As again, going back to Mr. Ali, this was fundamental to his teacher identity. So he says, I'm an RE teacher who is a Muslim, because if I put the word Muslim first, it implies you're some kind of religious leader. And here he's explicitly countering what I'm trying to say in this paper. He doesn't want to be positioned as a kind of leader. So how to understand this? So this reluctance to be seen as a Muslim RE teacher challenges the sense in which these teachers can be understood as a form of leadership. Part of their role is to place their faith backstage, adopting a neutral or impartial perspective in their teaching to embody non-confessional RE teaching. However, I think to make sense of this, these teachers are actually leaders of an emerging narrative within British Muslim communities, which is blending being Muslim with other professional and secular values, particularly in terms of work. And in contrast to official representative voices which are directed at the public sphere at large, these are much more implicit and focused on the everyday realities of Muslims around them. And so I think this new narrative is being reflected in new contextually embedded kinds of leadership, like that of Muslim chaplains, as Sophie has mentioned earlier, and I reckon Muslim teachers as well in schools across the UK. And the capacity to act as role models and interlocutors does this. Thank you very much.